of this global crisis. But I think being innovative and thinking outside of the box is going to help.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we came into 2020. Kevin and myself. You met Kevin, but you may not. If you see his face, you'll probably recognize him because I didn't meet you the last time. And so we came into 2020 with the plan to produce Salute the Culture for creators of color and Black creatives for impacting the culture and documenting the journey and trying to like inspire the next generation of young creatives all around. Because I think the concept of being a creative is just a lot of like uncertainty in that particular direction, even though it's more acceptable now as opposed to when I was coming up. Mm-hmm. But you know, you have parents that want to like deviate their children into different spaces, based on the creative makes no money, and there's a misconception in that whole space, and so that's part of the reason why we created Salute the Culture, to honor those who are not. It's not about people making money, but more so those who really shifting the culture and knocking down doors. And that's why I reached out to you, based on the space that you've created with the Prizm Art Fair, which I have not personally been to, but every one of my friends has been to that thing, and they and 4 or 5 years in a row. And the first time I didn't go to Basel was last year, and you know, when they came back, they kept talking about it. And Kev, my business partner, he kept talking about it, and so and then I did my research and I looked you up and I saw what you've produced, and I'm just here to honor you and based off of what you've accomplished. You know what I mean? So congratulations.
Thank you. And I really appreciate you, inviting me to have a conversation with you. I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about Salute the Culture or Salute Life and Salute the Culture and what you all are trying to do to inspire creative people of color. And I'm happy that your colleagues had a chance to come. It's my, I guess my initiative is driven by getting as many people, particularly people from the diaspora and from the continent even, to come and experience the fair. I'm from the Caribbean originally, so I can totally relate to having parents who want you to either be the conventional doctor or lawyer or you know. But when I told my parents I wanted to, you know, start an art fair after having gone to architecture school, they were like, "Why are you wasting your degree? Like, you know, why are you, you know, not, you know, pursuing, you know, architecture?" And I mean, architecture is something I will continue to love, and I actually am very much interested in continuing to pursue as like a part of Prizm in the future. But I was working on another arts project a couple of years ago and realized that I just had a natural affinity for working with artists. I consider myself an artist as well. So working with artists, creating or producing an artistic event I just enjoyed it 100%, and just decided to put all of my time and energy into making something really dynamic and that people could relate to and enjoy, and find gems that unfortunately the Western canon of art doesn't, you know, readily recognize, or nor do the research really to they don't spend the time doing the research, and unless they're vetted by specific institutions, you know, they really don't go into the community and find these sort of like hidden important gems. And I had and I have the fortune and the blessing of knowing several artists here in Miami and they've entrusted me, which I really appreciate their trust in me to include them in Prizm and represent them as well as I can on a global stage. So
before we get into that, I want to bring into the few people on the line. I want to first of all big up Saint Kids.
Big up Saint Kids, yes. Yes.
Don't mind them. You know,
Yeah.
But I'm just making so. But I want you to get into introduce yourself for those who don't know who you are. When did you start Prizm? And then I'll get into like salute life and salute the culture. But I'm gonna do that at the end because I feel like I'm right now. So I'm gonna at the end. But yeah, just introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce like salute the culture.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mikhaile Solomon. I'm the director and founder of Prizm Art Fair, which is an art fair that happens during concurrent to Miami Art Basel, Miami Art Week here in Miami. And we have a specific focus on exhibiting African and African diaspora contemporary artists who reflect global trends in art. And we've been hosting our fair now since 2013. We're going into our 8th year of hosting this fair. And up to even through 2020, we were hosting the fair physically in several venues across Miami. And since 2017, we've been hosting it in the same venue in downtown Miami. It's called the DuPont Building. It's an old historic Art Deco building. And I think last year in 2018, we had about 160 artists who exhibited in the art fair. We invite art galleries to participate with a specific focus on making sure that the galleries that participate have African or African diaspora proprietors. So the galleries are typically Black owned. Black Lives Matter has been a consistent supporter of our fair, and they often have a booth. Since 2017, as a matter of fact, they've had a booth at our fair. So I'm also very sensitive to where the diaspora and Africa exist in this global social justice conversation. And so I try to include that and consider that in the development and the continued design of the fair experience. We try to create a curatorial framework that addresses issues that are pertinent to our experience every year. And it's just been fun. We have artists from the Caribbean. We have artists from Ghana, from South Africa, from Nigeria, from St. Kitts, which is rare. You don't really see very many Kittitian artists. Trinidad, Jamaica, Guadeloupe, of course the United States. So we really do our best to make sure that the fair is Pan-African and speaks to our varied experience. We're not a monolith, so our experiences are varied and different depending on what region we are in on the planet. So yeah.
Okay. No. So I'll get into Salute Life's story and everything like that, because we have a very similar approach to how we kind of really directed where we were as far as a lifestyle platform. It was envisioned by a person by the name of Jamel Houseworth, who passed away, who was a friend of his partner Kevin. And then we took his vision. He wanted to honor artists and creatives, and just generally speaking, just wanted to honor artists and creatives. It wasn't even specified to like the culture. It was just like, I love creatives, let me honor them. He didn't get to carry that on, and then we kind of carried his vision. Not kind of, we carried his vision. And then we started the platform Salute Life, which was, I was writing a bunch of articles for different individuals all over the place, different brands, different apparel brands. And then in 2015, we went to No Commission with Swiss Beats.
Yeah.
And then we, like Kevin, he's the one with the idea, to be honest with you. He was like, yo, so I understand the concept of the art show possibly. So he said, yo, we could do an art show too. I'm like, what you talking about, bro? I never did an art show before. I'm like,
yeah.
He's like, yo, T, just think of something. So anyway, we thought of something, and then with the same premise in mind, our show is called the Unplugged Art Experience. So with the same premise in mind, we were trying to target artists of color. I didn't even know it was a thing, to be honest with you, in regards to like artists of color not being represented. I had no idea that wasn't a thing. I was just more so, the way I found out was getting artists in the show, and having conversations with them. So I had no premise of like background on like how the art industry was and how the things were navigated throughout the particular space of art. And then I started to call artists, and I started to recruit artists, and I got artists in the show. And then I had these conversations, and I was like, oh shit, like there's like they opportunities that you provide with Prizm are opportunities that they're seeking out, because there's very few spaces on a highly professional scale providing these opportunities.
Yeah.
And then it really made me understand why platforms such as Prizm was needed. You see what I'm saying? It was very interesting, and not only that, it was also interesting to me in regards to like the gender disparities within the art space. Curators of color, women, and the limited amount of women within the art space who are culturally making an impact, and not just for artists in general. And so once I did my research and started to kind of really do due diligence and figure out, not in regards to what we do, but in regards to like what you've accomplished, that's what made me excited about having a conversation with you in regards to what you've accomplished. And I think it's so dope that that you're representing, and not only just for Black artists, but you're representing at such an elite level that when an artist comes from your show, I haven't engaged with any artists for your show, but they must feel proud as far as being involved within your space. And I think I have to, again, no pun intended, salute you. Thank everything what you're doing with her show, the Prizm Art Fair. We're discussing that. We're going to discuss everything, and you also have the opportunity to ask questions. So if you have any questions in the comment section, please ask away. There's also like a question box where you can submit your questions, and then I'm going to try to get those questions to you. Also, I have to make sure that we stay on time, because this thing shuts down in like an hour. So,
sure, no problem.
So
yeah.
What I wanted to get into was, I have like all these questions lined up. So, kind of reference to what we were just talking about. Lavish Looney saying what up?
Oh, hey. I haven't seen him in a long time. I hope he's doing good. Yeah. So there's a couple articles that I read. In May 2019, Forbes printed out this particular article, but I'm just going to read an excerpt. It says, artists say African Americans are absent from historical art collections in some of the world's largest museums, galleries, and major art auctions. In addition, the discouraging reality in the art world, according to NPR, about the gender disparities, and that article came out in September 2018. Was that something that, when you created your show, was that something that you had in the back of your mind, or you found out along the way? Well, no, like actually, I'm very intentional about everything, and how we design the fair specifically addresses gaps in what the industry currently has to offer the public, and the public's understanding of this specific segment of the arts industry. So I understand that there are not as many artists of color that are women, that are an accepted part of the canon. I'm very aware of that, and some of the artists and I have those conversations. I'm very aware that museums have traditionally not collected African American, African artists for a long time. There's a push to do it now. You find that there's these conversations in some of the major art publications, like I believe the San Francisco MoMA, for instance, deaccessioned a number of artists by artworks that they had in their collection by famous artists to make room for Black and African artists, or African American and or African artists. I think the same can be said for the Baltimore Museum of Art. Did the same thing. They sold work. That's what deaccessioning means. They'll sell work so they can use that money to, whether that. I mean, they could use the money that they get from the sales for anything, but typically, what they would do is either use that money to help with overhead for the museum, or they'll buy new works of art. And in the case of San Francisco MoMA and the Baltimore Museum of Art, that's what they did. They deaccessioned work to make room or to get capital so that they can buy more works by African and or even Latinx artists. I mean, that's another segment that's sorely underrepresented in a number of museum collections. So the mission for Prizm is to intentionally address a number of things, a number of aspects of the art industry that are skewed, and where the art industry does not currently have or address those issues. That's what we we endeavor to do. I saw that Taina was in the group, and I see Lauren Harris just jumped in as well. Two young ladies who are themselves very much so actively involved in supporting artists in the industry as well. Taina works with Prizm, so she helps me kind of figure things out as we try to deal with some of the issues that we're discussing now.
Yeah, so your growth and with your intentionality, my man Free's on here. What's up, Free? An artist out there in LA area. Your growth from 2013 into now we're in 2020, that's 7 years. What have you learned in that space? I know it's a very broad question, especially with 7 years, but three things that you've learned in your experiences with curating this space for people of color and
oh man. Because I think it's such a hard question to ask or to answer, because literally every single year I am bombarded by so many things that I learn, whether that be about the funding opportunities for projects like mine. There really isn't a very large pool of money to support things like this.
I know firsthand. We already know that part.
Yeah. So I find that, and the thing is that there's so many people who have fantastic ideas for how to address issues like this. I've had the pleasure of meeting a number of art professionals who are doing their best to kind of navigate what seems to be a very treacherous ecosystem, specifically on the funding, in terms of the funding part of it. I spent a lot of time writing grants and, just trying to get support from the community to make something like this happen. And that's the hard part. I think that's the hardest part, is making sure that we have the capital to do this the way we want to do it. And what we try to do is create an experience that is as that isn't onerous in the money sense for the artists who are participating.
Okay.
So we really try to make it an experience where the artists don't have to really pay for anything, and they can just kind of focus on, participating and being a part of the experience. And that's hard because I don't think any art fair really does that. They have many art fairs have different models. Our art fair is completely different because we're literally trying to address a number of things that don't exist to support the artists that we work with. So yeah, I would say that's one thing, is just finding the funding to do what we do.
So I'm gonna let you finish, but I'm gonna get back to that part of the funding aspect, because I think a lot of people don't understand how hard it is to produce, especially on the scale that you're producing. How the level of stress and the level of work it takes to produce it, especially with the amount of funding, whether it's what doesn't matter, whatever funding that you're allotted to, you have to create as much as possible. But continue.
Yeah, so you have to be very creative and stretch the money as much as you can. I think another part of it is it's just the logistics of everything too, like managing the various aspects, like shipping and making sure that you have the human resources in place to support the artists when they need things. Every year we learn how to do that better. We try to improve on like just the basic logistics of managing this big thing, because every year it gets bigger, and as we get bigger, those challenges get bigger. So that's another aspect of or something else that I learn every year about putting this thing together. And then also we learn how the community and our patrons respond to what we do. Based on data that we get from our ticket sales, we try to ask specific questions of people when they get tickets to our fair, and we try our best to tailor the experience to what we feel and know. I think it's a lot of it has to do with us learning our audience, and then also learning how to educate the audience who are the audience that isn't necessarily artistically inclined, right? Like we all, to me, that's the audience that's really important. Like the folks who have huge art collections already, like they're great because they create a foundation for the fair. But ultimately, I also want people who might not necessarily feel comfortable talking about art, or may have felt disenfranchised by the artistic institutions, right? If they don't feel comfortable in those spaces, I want Prizm to be the place where you do feel comfortable, where you can talk to galleries and ask those questions that you might be afraid to ask if you go to a museum, and yeah, so those are three things.
So that wasn't even my next question, but you made a good point. Just educating people on, like, especially in households of color. I have a conversation with a friend of mine about the importance of buying art. And she's a person of color, and she has disposable income, but she just didn't understand why buying art is important, as opposed to buying a new furniture piece. I'm not saying one is more important than the next, but she just didn't see the purpose. So what I tried to explain to her was the first of all, there's art for everybody. I think there's a misconception in what you're speaking about. If I don't know that much about art, there's art for everybody. There's a price point for everyone, and I think that isn't really discussed enough. And I don't remember my parents talking about art growing up. You know, putting two different kinds of art in their house. So how can you educate them and the audience in regards to, you know, there's art for everyone and why it's important to buy art?
Yeah, so we have a platform where we have conversations. We invite people like academicians. We invite artists. We have a platform called Prizm Panels.
Okay.
And we have people from the industry. We have last year we had folks who produce who have media platforms like Sugarcane Magazine or Black Art in America. Nadia Sisse, I'm trying to remember the name. Blanc Modern. You know, she has these are all folks who are producing content and who commission writers to discuss and create conversations around the artwork that we see at Prizm and various other venues. We had, who else did we have? Myself and other cultural producers, like another organization called Museum Hue, which invites folks to experience museums through the lens of an African diaspora focused organization. They take you to museums and you look at the artwork from Stephanie and Monica's perspective. And I think that's a hugely important platform as well. We create space for people to talk about the projects that they do and why art is important to them and how to make art accessible to them through these various organizations. And then also, you know, what we also stress is that we have various price points at Prizm, right? So we understand that not everybody is gonna drop $1 million or $500,000 or whatever those higher price points are on a piece of work, but we have entry level price points, I think, for folks that is comfortable. I think last year we had works that were as little as $200, you know, and if you wanted a larger investment, you could do that as well. We had works that were expensive as $30,000. So you can find where you feel comfortable. And what I love about the galleries that participate at the fair is that they have congeniality, right? And they never make people feel like you can't approach them and ask questions. So all of the galleries that we work with are very, very, they're kind. They want you to feel excited about buying their artist's work. I try my best to be accessible to any client or anybody who has any questions. We have folks like Taina who's there to answer questions. Ashley, who's another one of our members that works with us. Our board members are actively a part of what we do as well. So we have an advisory board that's also there to support the endeavor and make sure people feel comfortable with the experience. So, yeah.
So I'm going to jump back. I'm going to get into this is like deviating from my actual questions, but I'm going to jump back into what you were saying. So jump back into the production aspect of actual art show. So for us, when we produced our show, we produced it, and what you were saying, you tried to, I don't know, let me not paraphrase, but you said try to lower the cost as much as possible on the artist and correct. Is that what you were saying before?
No, we don't try to lower the, no, I wouldn't say that. We don't try to lower the cost. Okay. What we do, because the artists who are emerging, right, their work is naturally at at a level that is introductory because they're new to the market, right? So you can support an emerging artist at that introductory level. And of course, the goal is that that artist's work will eventually grow in value, right? But you can learn. It's a good place to meet new artists. It's a good place to establish relationships with artists so that you can watch their careers grow, and you can be a continued support of that artist's continued growth. There's a couple of artists who just joined in, like Morel and T. Elliott Mansa. They're like huge parts of the Miami arts ecosystem. They've been participatory for over a decade at this point. And I had the pleasure of working with them when they were, not new, but they were like, I would say mid-career artists when I met them. And so, now they're doing fantastic things, they're in museum shows. I curated Morel's first solo show, at the African Heritage Cultural Arts Center, in October, which was awesome. And it was an honor to work with him. Is that when you find an emerging artist and you love what they're producing, be an encouragement to that, an encouragement to them, encourage them to continue and buy their work. Buy it when the price point is accessible for you, but then also continue to support them as they grow.
Okay, I'm gonna say Stacy's commenting again. If you guys have
Stacy said something.
Please, there's a question box. Submit your questions in the question box, or you can put it in the comments. Sometimes I don't see it in the comment section, so try to put it in the question box in case. Let me scroll through and see if anybody had any questions. This is Salute the Culture. I'm Atiba from Salute Life. This is Miss Mikhaile from Prizm Art Fair, and I'm just scrolling through real quick. All right, I don't see any questions.
Well, Stacy made a very valid comment. Stacy said that it's going to take education to get our communities to understand the idea of cultural investment.
Yep.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. Like I mentioned earlier, there's some folks who've never felt comfortable or have naturally felt as though museums and cultural institutions are exclusionary spaces. And I think there has to be a push to insist that museums are for everybody, and that cultural spaces are for everyone. And there has to be consistent programming that makes people from different socioeconomic strata feel comfortable and feel as though this is accessible to them.
And I think, well, that's why I think Prizm Art Fair is so important. That's why I mentioned at the beginning, because if those platforms are not provided, you're there to kind of like fill in the gap as best as possible.
Right.
But go ahead, continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think there are institutions beyond Prizm that do that. I think there's a number of like community focused organizations. Not like in New York. I think there's a laundromat project, for instance. There's Mokata Museum, which is an incredibly it's an amazing museum. It's small, but I think it's small and it's intimate gives people an opportunity they don't feel shut out by it. They can just go in and talk to folks, which is great. In Miami, there's institutions like I think the Bakehouse is an accessible space. Diaspora Vibe is a Caribbean focused incubator. I think the Perez Art Museum does a very good job at creating. They have this program called Local Views, where artists from Miami give tours of current exhibitions, and they have discussions about select work in the exhibitions that they have on view at the time. which I think is a really cool initiative. So yeah, I think people are I think institutions are trying to do this, and I think it's on the heels. I remember when Michelle Obama and Michelle and Barack, or Barack and Michelle, whichever way you want, whichever way you want to throw it in there. When the Obamas were in office, Michelle was at the Whitney Museum, and she gave a speech, and she said that, you know, when she was young, she felt as though these spaces weren't meant for her, and that she hopes that people will, that these institutions will consider everyone, and the entirety of the community, so that they can feel included in an arts and culture conversation. And I think it was after she said that, I think a lot of people started to reconsider how, a lot of these institutions started to reconsider how they were going to position themselves and how they were going to connect with the community. And I think it's I don't think it's, I really don't understand why people are grappling with this. It's just like, make it accessible, like talk to people,
Yeah.
right? But I think they have their own internal issues when it comes to like ridiculous amounts of money and how these institutions are financed. I think they have to like figure out how to deal with that first, and then afterwards they can really start figuring out how to educate the community. They have to make sure they have the right people who are community minded on the boards of these larger institutions, because the reality is, currently most of those institutions are havens for people, are havens for people with a lot of money.
Yeah.
Those people are on those boards because they're basically trying to hide their money. but they're not necessarily community oriented people. And I mean, that has to shift. It's important to have people on your boards that are moneyed, because I mean, that's what's going to fuel the sustainability of the organizations. But ultimately, they also have to be civically engaged. They have to have compassion, and they do have to care about the health and the cultural preservation of the way this community, the way the institutions are going to be a reflection of that community long term, not just in the present moment, but how are people in the future going to look back on the collections that these institutions have and say, okay, I can understand why this institution decided to collect a Morel or a T. Eliot Manta, because these folks were preserving a snapshot of what Miami was like in 2015. You know, they were talking about the culture in this space, and we can understand what was happening in Miami, what was happening in the world at the time, because we look back at those people's works.
I have two questions for you. One is Kevin. Kevin's my business partner, the Nixon brand, and then I have I'm gonna go with Stacy Lynn Waddell first. And you see the question?
Yeah. Can you speak to the location of Prizm? How has the location been a bonus?
What strategies do you follow
to get folks' attention away from the beach? Oh, that's a good question. In 2013 through 2016, we were essentially just jumping around from location to location, trying to find where the best place was. And part of the reason why we landed where we landed is because a good friend of mine who runs a gallery called Primary Projects in Miami, she referred me to the proprietor of the building where we host the fair now, and I took a tour of the building, and I thought it was a very interesting building because it speaks to the history of Miami. It's an old Art Deco building, but then I also know that Miami for a very long time has been trying to figure out what to do with downtown Miami, right? Downtown has like, I would say, like after the 1970s, downtown Miami became a ghost town.
Yeah.
Like if you look at old pictures of Miami pre 70s, Miami was bustling. There was a lot of people. It was almost like a little mini New York. But then I'm not sure what historical things happened in Miami after the 70s. Oh, I think it was. I think it was perhaps like the cocaine cowboy days. Yeah, yeah. The cocaine cowboy days kind of affected downtown Miami in a negative, in a nefarious way, and there was a sort of flight away from downtown Miami. But in the I would say in the past decade, maybe the past 20 years, Miami, the downtown Miami area, they have an economic development partner that helps bring tourism and visibility to downtown. And they've been trying to figure out. So they have projects like Miami Art Days, which is basically 1 week out of the year, like usually in September, where they actually fund different art projects and cultural happenings in downtown Miami. And then they also fund projects that happen during Miami Art Week to get folks to downtown Miami. And so Prizm is a partner in that initiative. We get support from downtown Miami, and in exchange for that, what they do is they help us market our fair to various parts of the city and the world, really. We work with their marketing department to market our fair to the beach. What we do is we have signs all along Biscayne Boulevard and on the causeway that takes you over to the beach to attract people to come to our fair.
Okay.
Downtown Miami also has a large mailing list themselves. So what they do is they send out our content to their I think 25,000 plus people database. We also have a large database as well. We have a database of about maybe 11,000 people. So we do definitely get our messaging out to folks. We also have a good relationship with Art Basel and some of the other fairs. Having done this for a while, you kind of figure out and know who to talk to in all these different spaces to create alliances with other projects. So that's part of how we address the fact that we're in downtown Miami and everybody's on the beach. And I think people are interested. The good thing about it is that the people who come to Prizm are there because they want to be, right? It's not like if you left Miami Beach, if you left like the cacophony that is Wynwood to come to downtown Miami, you came there specifically for us. Yep. which I love. I love that people are there intentionally, and oftentimes what happens is that people that do come, they stay all day. You know, they'll come to the fair, they'll go get lunch, and then they'll come back for talks later. So I even though it is a little bit removed from everything else, I like that the people that are coming to Prizm are coming there because they specifically want to be there.
Yeah, they make the effort, especially during that time.
They make the effort.
It's very hard to navigate Miami during Miami Art Week period of time. So the fact that everybody navigates to their spaces is a credit to what you accomplished. I'm going to shout out Hyde Park Shy. He says, Mikhaile has a great eye, great artwork. She has work that you'll kick yourself 2 years for not acquiring from Prizm.
Yeah. Hi, John. John comes to Prizm every single year. John is like one of our biggest advocates, and he's been super supportive, and I'm thankful that he believes in us.
So Kev, the Nixon brand, had a question. He says, can you share more about, I think you kind of shared it within what you just said, but can you share more about your experience in successfully getting community partners to support Prizm?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So I think since we started in 2013. It's been a combination of sitting on boards myself and doing community work. So, for instance, there is the Miami-Dade Department of Cultural Affairs. They have a public art um, trust that I sit on, and a number of projects that happen throughout the year. For instance, they have a number of call to artists. And what we do is we send those call to artists out to a number of artists. If I see projects that I think specific artists, and I get to learn a lot about what the city is doing culturally on the arts and culture front, and then in support of it, I guess as a way of maintaining that relationship, the Miami-Dade Department of Cultural Affairs also funds our project. They're one of our major funders. I really love how actively they support with money. They love giving money away to artists. And if you're an artist in the room, I highly suggest that you pay attention to Miami-Dade Department of Cultural Affairs website, because they have funding opportunity, or they have artist commission projects all the time you can apply for if you would like to apply for those projects. And then we've gotten support from like the Knight Foundation for a number of years. They typically have what they call an arts challenge. If you have an interesting idea and you want to have it funded, the application process isn't long. It's literally a 2 to 3 sentence application. You send it in and they'll get back to you on what their decision is by a certain time. And that's how we got the I guess initial seed funding to help grow the fair. Prior to that, I was working, and we still are working with an organization called the Green Family Foundation. The Green Family Foundation supports specifically projects that are rooted in the Caribbean and supporting Caribbean culture. They also the university that I graduated from, Florida International University. I think it's just been through, but a lot of it has happened via osmosis. I've been in the right rooms at the right time. I've maintained relationships with people. Sometimes it's that people reach out to me because they've heard about Prizm and they want to know how they can support it. And then sometimes I will actively, send emails to folks. And then also, as I mentioned before, we have a fantastic board. Our board of advisors, they've seen me at my worst, and they know when I need help, and so they make recommendations on who I need to speak to in order to get certain things done. I think I saw Jeremiah. Jeremiah is in the room. So Jeremiah is one of our board members, and he's made fantastic suggestions on what we can do to solve issues along human resources. So it's a number of different things that we do to get community support and work with community partners.
Okay. Just for people jumping in and out of the room again, my name is Atiba with Salute Life. Atiba Broadway is my nickname, but Atiba with Salute Life. We're doing Salute the Culture. We're there to honor Mikhaile and the Prizm Art Fair. I thank you guys for jumping in on us. If you have any questions, please submit it now. We're almost coming to the time limit, but please submit with how do you acquire artists? How do you go about doing that?
And so every year what we typically do is we have a call to artists. And what we do is we always have a curatorial focus that along the lines of which the artists have to submit their work. And like last year, oddly enough, the focus of the fair was called "Love in the Time of Hysteria" was the title of the of the fair's focus last year, which is really strange because subsequently all this madness is happening. It almost seems prescient, but with that concept in mind, we sent that idea out to all of the artists that we have in our database.
Okay.
I think right now we have over maybe 500 to 600 artists in the database, and we send it out to everyone, and we get replies. And myself and a curatorial committee that myself, William Cordova, and we put together a curatorial committee. Sometimes it's just him and I, and sometimes it's him, myself, and maybe up to three other folks. We review the applications and we decide on usually about maybe 30 artists, maybe 40 artists, in addition to the galleries that will be participating in the fair. I think this year we're going to have to do that differently because of our circumstances. We will be hosting the fair, but we'll be doing it in a digital format. I hardly think anybody's going to be willing to come on a plane to come to Miami Beach this year. That's what we're moving towards, is migrating the experience to the online platform. But as a result, I think that's also going to change how we select the artists that are participating. I think we'll likely just have to just choose the artists. And I think we can probably choose more artists this year because the logistics that are, the overhead won't be as difficult as it is when you're doing it in person, in real time. Yeah. I think that's going to be our approach for this year.
So that brings me, well, that was like one of my other questions, as far as I saw that Sotheby's maybe about 3 weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, they did their first, not their first live, but like post-COVID art auction, and they were talking about how successful that was, and they sold, I don't know, it's 3 weeks ago, so they might have done something different, but it was like they sold a $6 million art piece via online, and I was just looking at checking out like what the transition of the art world will be in these COVID spaces,
Yeah.
Yeah,
to your point, I don't know if you saw, and if anybody in the chat saw over the weekend, I think it was yesterday, there was a black art auction online.
Well, yeah, I did. I missed it. I didn't get to do it, but I knew about it.
The lots were incredible. I was like, these pieces are amazing. And they did exceptionally well. They sold mostly everything. So I was super excited to see that.
Was that Indianapolis? It was out of Indianapolis, right?
Yes, it was.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was amazing. The lots were exceptional.
Wow. Okay. Damn. I forgot about it. I put it in my mind. I should put it in my calendar.
Yeah.
That is. Oh, some artists able. You want to clarify, Stacey? Oh, some artists are able to endure. Okay. Okay.
Some are able to. Yes.
Okay. For the artists out there who are creating in this space, right? And we got about maybe 6-7 minutes left. Who is creating in this space, and it's just a tumultuous space that we're in for some, especially in the Northeast area, New York specifically. How do you? What would be your advice for them in regards to not get stuck in what was going on, but more so still seek opportunities, because it could be a very frustrating time to produce based on whatever your personal circumstances are. Maybe family members have gotten sick and things of that nature. So what would be your advice for them to kind of push on and continue to produce?
I think a number of artists are just doing that. They're just producing anyway. And thankfully, it seems that a number of philanthropic spaces are helping artists. Like there's artist relief funds. I see a number of opportunities all the time on a daily basis, quite frankly, of opportunities where artists can apply for funding. Some organizations are even helping artists pay their health benefits to provide that sort of relief just yet. But I wish we were, and I think we'll get to that point down the road. But I think that's incredible, and I think that organizations are stepping up to figure out how to provide relief and even mental health. It's like there's even I've seen even opportunities out there where some organizations are giving money to help pay for mental health counseling during all of this. So I think if you don't mind perusing the internet for a little while, you can definitely find opportunities. I just saw. I think there's no lack of artists not doing well, even in this space. Like some of the artists that I've worked with are winning awards right now. Like someone just won a Guggenheim Award 2 days ago. So I think people are still figuring out how to thrive.
Just want to say thank you. You know what I'm saying? Like super, super dope. I think you've been super really responsive towards us, and even on the invitation space. And I wish I went to your show, because I saw it online. I was like, yo, this is dope. Like, this is dope. And just the artwork. And shout out to the artists that you have in your particular show. I mean, you got some exceptional artists in your show. Actually, what I want to say also is how you're raised in Miami, correct? I know you're from St. Kitts, but you're raised in Miami.
I was born and raised in Miami, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, born and raised in Miami. So how is it just being from the Miami community and bringing that back to the community?
Oh, I love it. And for me, the part of the reason why I started Prizm is because myself and artists from Miami would have like these off-the-cuff conversations about how they don't get to show in these spaces, and there is no way for them to get into those spaces. I was like, okay, well, let's figure out how to do that. How can we create a platform? And like literally, it was just an act of benevolence. People just started helping me cultivate the resources to do it. And this is the 8th year we're doing it. So
go ahead. Sorry.
So our mandate is to make sure that at least 25% of the artists that are in the fair are from Miami.
Oh, that's up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what's up. I remember we did a show in the Miami Supercar Rooms. Shout out to Miami Supercar Rooms. It's over there, right next to Overtown in Wynwood. Mm-hmm. And I remember doing the show, our first show there, and I looked at the space and I saw right outside you have Overtown right across the street, and then you got this place with like $1 million cars and all these things that like where our particular art show was. And I said to myself, I'm never going to do a show in Miami again without coming back and connecting with the community, ever. Mm-hmm. Because my whole thing was, he's got all these people pouring in outside of Miami, and putting money in the community in Miami. But you have poverty right there, right next to the wealth. And I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, who's pouring back into those people? Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? And so the fact that you're saying that you're connecting with artists and you make it a point to at least have a quarter of the artists represented in your particular show is from your hometown, and I think that's very important. It shows the commitment towards the community. It shows a commitment towards the plight of the artistic community, especially in the communities of color, which don't necessarily get those looks. And you're pairing them next to artists from globally from around the world, Africa, the Caribbean, and you're just providing such a big, just blessing to the diaspora in the creative space. And I would love to see Prizm just be the marquee. You understand what I'm saying? Like that would be so. That would be right up there in these conversations, and they're getting to this particular conversation, particular show. And so salute to you again.
Thank you.
So again, this is Salute the Culture. We discussed for the past hour the Prizm Art Fair, and everything in between. But I'm gonna let you properly close out, and then we'll get that on the closing, and then we'll take it from there.
Awesome. So I was saying, thank you so much for coming, everyone. We appreciate your comments, your support, your belief in our mission. If you would like to follow us, we're at Prizm Art Fair on every social media platform. That's Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. If you'd like to follow me, you can follow me at Mikhaile Solomon on all of those platforms as well. And then our website is www.Prizm Art Fair. That's Prizm with a Z, not an S. .com. And stay in touch with us, and we should be posting information on how we're moving forward, given this year's circumstances, on our website within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, cool. And this is a keeper from Salute the Culture, Salute Life, and you can follow us on Salute Life. You can go to salute.life, and then check for updates on anything that we have coming up.